What is your first reaction when you heard that you've been acquitted?
I was surprised, but because I believe that I've been right all the time. I believe that I spoke the truth, and what I didn't quite believe was the judicial system and how independent it is. So that was the major concern for me. So it did come as a surprise. Definitely, it did come as a surprise.
Your first reaction?
My first reaction was I closed my face and I just cried, because 13 years is a very long time. It's a 13-year struggle, and with a lot of restrictions to them, and therefore it really is to say I'm free, and excitement in that there is hope, but the battle is not over.
13 years is, as you say, is a long time, and I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation, may not be aware of exactly what led to this court case. It started off with this memorandum that you submit to the government after you call a press conference. Tell us more about it, especially for those who are not aware.
Right, and I think this is where Malaysia Kini comes in, actually. Earlier, prior to that whole development, when we all knew about that there was the conditions in the detention centers was a major concern for many of us, and you yourself had done your own independent research and interviews and found that there were deaths in the camp. And there was attempts to publish that whole findings in the special issue of the Sun magazine, and it did not see the light of the day. And so then, since Tenaga had conducted the interviews during its course of research on migration, health, and HIV/AIDS, then it was seen that since we had the information, that we should now expose the issue. And so, in fact, we took the softest approach, I would say, in advocacy work. The softest approach for me is where you expose the issue through a press conference, and you send a memorandum to the government as a feedback of the conditions, in this case, of the detention centers where migrant workers were being held. And that's what I did. And where we had put together a kind of a summary of the interviews with more than 300 migrant workers, former detainees that we had interviewed, as a side interview to the major study on migration, health, and HIV/AIDS. And so I had sent it to all the relevant agencies and expected the government to at least do their own investigations, and then at least to state that they would make changes and hold accountable the officers who were responsible for the torture, for the abuse, and for the deaths in the camps.
So the intention is to let the government know about the situation, hoping that somehow they will take action?
That's right.
And instead they take action against you?
Yeah, but to my surprise, when I returned from the 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing, the police were hunting. That was 1995.
Right.
The memorandum came out in the end of July, and we had a press conference at the end of July, and then we sent to all the agencies as soon as after the press conference, and then I left for Beijing. And when I returned, I discovered that the police were hunting for me. And what had happened was the head of the commandant of the Seminary camp, Malik Jano, had filed a case of criminal defamation against me. And the police used that report to investigate me. So it came as a real shock, because I expected the government of the day to investigate into the issues I had raised in the memorandum, or the allegations that was made, And when this happened, At first, I didn't want to go for any questioning, but my lawyers said, go in and show that you're cooperating, you're ready to give information. The other surprise that came to me was when I did go for the questioning, the police were not interested in the issues. They were interested in the people who gave the information. And I said, that's not what I'm going to give them in. Because then they would go for the migrant workers who gave the information. And as a researcher, it was my responsibility to hold the confidentiality that I had assured to them when I did the interviews. And finally, I gave names of 3 persons who did the interview. 2 of my staff, and 1 is a Bangladeshi social worker.
What do you say about the fact that the law, the printing law, is being used against, a person like you?
I think the government now has seen a way to criminalize anyone who brings up the issue. And even if we call that a publication, the act of publication only came, they say, when I handed the memorandum to the journalists from the New Straits Times, and that handing is considered as publishing. Now, the journalist was not charged who wrote the article, but I was charged. And that's fundamentally, that's really flawed already. So it was a period when now we begin to see, other than using the Internal Security Act to silence activists, now at that point in time in 1996, the government was beginning to criminalize activists using, like the Printing Presses and Publication Act or the Sedition Act. And I think that was where the trend came in, the way of repression drove into the country.
It's basically like saying that that you should be thankful to the to the government for deciding not to proceed with the case.
No, why should I be thankful to the government when when I should not have been charged at all in the first instance? The government went into a state of denial. It did not take responsibility for what happened. And so in no way I can say that I am grateful to this government, because it has lost 13 years of my life for nothing. And so justice is not just done because there is an acquittal. Justice can only be done if remedies are made to what I stood for, to the contents in the memorandum, to freedom of expression being upheld in this country, to human rights defenders being protected. Unless all those things are in place, then only there is meaning to the acquittal. And so it's not a favor that I look for. Definitely not.